We have a lot of viewers from around the world, so if you can actually explain improv, because it's not like we think it's a, you know, everybody knows about what improv is, but
they don't.
Yeah, some people across the world, they have no idea.
Yeah, some people think it's stand-up comedy, which it's not. Mm-hmm. So what improv is, generally it's a group of people, and they come out on stage, and they ask the audience for a suggestion, and then someone offers a suggestion, and then they make up a show on the spot from that suggestion. So there's nothing planned, there's nothing programmed, they don't know what the other person's gonna say. They are spontaneously putting on a show based on that single first suggestion.
And it's spontaneous, as you mentioned, but your film, it goes beyond just getting up on stage and getting the suggestion and you know, doing this group thing. You really talk about the mind and the connection of people and creativity. So just give us the lowdown on your film.
Well, I think there's a lot of films out there that show improvisers improvising, and so my film wasn't going to be that film, and it's not about like all of improv, like the history of the famous people who do improv. It's not neither of those things. Like you say, it begins at improv, which is this thing that gets made up by a team of people working together, making eye contact the way we're doing now, and listening to each other the way we're doing now, and gets into the brain science of what we would call group mind, which is the idea that when people are performing this thing, they start to understand, they start to do things, they don't even know why they're doing it. Like there's something that's, like there's 8 people, and then there's like a ninth mind that's telling everyone what to do. And so I was working with this improv group who was very serious about group mind and what it was, and that snagged me, and I was doing improv myself and working with them, and then I kind of loved that they loved group mind, and that's what the film became about. But as you say, so we talk about the science of the mind that does that, and also about its role in our very existence, the fact that we're human beings living on this planet right now. It's kind of the punchline of the film.
And your father is mentioned in the film. And he was a help to you too, because he was a teacher, and he kind of, like, I saw the diagrams that he drew for you. Tell me about the relationship with your father and why you decided to include him in the film.
Well, something about group mind that really came up because I was really approaching it from a scientific perspective of like what happens between brains. And you know, I couldn't really do, like I wanted to put a couple of improvisers in a, you know, one of those things, a CAT scan, while they improvised. And we do have some of that level of science in there. But what started to happen was there's a lot of what I would call synchronicity. We actually talk about synchronicity in the film. And my father died between the time I raised the money and I started shooting the film. And I kept coming back to this idea of collective unconscious, which is something he taught me about when I was younger than my son is here with me right now. Maybe he'll come and say hello on screen. Do you want to say hi real quick? This is my son. Okay. Just say hi. Hi. Thank you. So when I was a little bit younger than this guy, my dad taught me about this thing called the collective unconscious, which is this idea that you and I each have our individual consciousnesses, and we each have our individual unconscious, but like our culture has a collective unconscious, right? And so my father taught me about that when I was about 10 years old. And he dies, and I start thinking about the collective unconscious, and I start thinking about how I feel connecting to my dad, and I start making this movie, like, but that these thoughts just kept coming through me, and ultimately ended up in the film. And ultimately the synchronicity of all these different things, improv, death, and Ice Age, all came together in the film, which it's not a long film.
It's not.
But it's dense, right?
It is.
There's a lot going on.
There's a lot of like good layers, and
Thank you.
It's really interesting because when you say that, I think like in Western cultures we don't like tap into that, and you talk about like the tribes and you know some of the Eastern cultures they're very in tune with that sort of thing. So I mean, I think it's interesting that you added that too, just as a you know. And I guess improv is the way that we,
it's sort of a
way.
Western acceptable way that people are beginning to scratch the surface of these really deep primordial ways we connect. And I think what's interesting is working on the film, I went back to school to become a therapist.
Wow.
So now I'm a therapist.
Wow.
Like in training, and a filmmaker who's, it's been an interesting journey. So there's these ways that our Western cultures really connects, like improv, therapy, certainly things like yoga, chanting, meditation, are all ways that we tap into this, and yet it's kind of like, medicinal. Like we're kind of doing it for so that you're not stressed, so that you can do
it's something to do for fun, like just to relax.
Or a way to sort of like survive your enervatingly horrid corporate job.
Yeah.
So the idea, I think, of the film, and you've seen it, is that like this is the real stuff. Yeah. Right? This is the stuff that saved humanity.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like, to me, I don't know, very exciting.
It is. Is there something that you learned when doing research that surprised you?
I think what kept surprising me was the way it all just seemed to connect. Like, for example, one of the pieces that ended up on the cutting room floor, but now people who watch this are going to get a special insight. So my father was evacuated to Cornwall in World War II, and that's in the film. And at one point, we had in the film that the psychologist John Bowlby, who's an English psychologist, he started studying the kids that were evacuated, their attachment to their parents was disrupted by their evacuation. And so just the impact of that separation, he studied a generation of kids, and of course that goes back to my dad, who had a lot of issues. Yeah. So, and was sort of looking to reconnect, and maybe
lived on an island.
He lived on an island, and yet here he was studying Carl Jung, wanting to reconnect on some really deep spiritual level. And ultimately, because one of the things it talks about in the film is that he was having, like, we don't know if it was strokes, but somehow the left side of his brain was going offline, and that was connecting his right side of the brain. Another commonly known referenced, it's oft referenced, and I reference it in the film, which is the My Stroke of Insight lady. And she's referenced in the film, and she had a neuroscientist who had a stroke. So it talks about what happens when that the language center goes offline.
You become more creative, right?
Well, that's one of the things, but we're also more connected to this like vast collective of like all of our souls. Sounds a little woo-woo.
Sounds really cool.
It sounds really cool. Thank you.
I hope people will see your film. And so what's next for the film? You're at VideoFest. Where else are you going with the film?
Well, it was really great because I have a relationship with Bart, and he had programmed one of my films a couple of years ago. And so when he said, he asked for submissions, and I said, hey, you want to see mine? And he went right away. Like, he saw it, loved it. So this is like the first place that it programmed it. So it's very exciting to be here, and I'm really excited to make this the first stop. There's a bunch of other festivals that I'm out to. I'm talking with my sales agent. We'll probably try to do some stuff with it in terms of academics, take it to schools and stuff, but it's going to be rentable on Vimeo.
Okay, cool.
So it's probably as either Improv Death Ice Age. I doubt if you could find it by my name, but you could try. Stephanie Hubbard.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not up yet because we're not there yet, but we will be like within about a month. It'll be available on Vimeo.
Okay, and we'll keep people posted on that too.
That would be great. Yeah, you could see the trailer on the Facebook page. The Facebook page is Improv Death Ice Age.
Improv Death Ice Age.
Yes. You could see the trailer.
Improv Death Ice Age.
And I feel like the title really contains every element of the film. And so it's funny because people are like, so what is it about? And I'm like, Improv Death Ice Age. Yeah.
All right, well, congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you enjoyed the film.